I won $1 million. Then my children found me. The money found my children before I did. 4 children returned. None came for love.
I didn't know I had won anything. That's the part people never believe. They think money announces itself loudly, with flashing lights. With joy, it doesn't. It arrived in a plain white envelope. No gold letters, no congratulations on the front, just my name. Spelled correctly, that alone was unusual. At my age, people get your name wrong more often than they get it right. I opened the letter slowly, standing in my kitchen, the kettle already cooling behind me. The words didn't make sense at first. Unclaimed funds, verified account, amount released. I read it twice. Then a third time. $1 million. I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was impossible. I had lived alone for 15 years. No savings, no family sending gifts, no luck following me around. Luck doesn't visit women like me. I sat down. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight, like the room had grown smaller. They said the money came from an old investment account. Something my late husband had opened decades ago, something forgotten. Forgotten things don't disappear, they wait. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with my unpaid bills. I didn't call anyone. I didn't celebrate. Old women know better than to trust sudden gifts. That night, I barely slept. Not because of excitement, because of memory. Because there is one thing money does better than anything else. It wakes people up. The next morning, my phone rang. I hadn't heard it ring in days. I stared at it for a long moment before answering. A young voice, polite, careful. "Hello," he said. "I'm calling regarding a financial update linked to your name." My name again. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. By the end of the call, the money was real, verified, transferred, impossible to ignore. By the afternoon, the first message arrived, not from the bank. From someone I didn't recognize. "I think I might be your son." I read it 3 times. My son had died before he learned to speak. At least that's what I had been told. I put the phone down. I told myself it was a coincidence, a scam. A mistake. Then the second message came from a different number. "We need to talk. It's about the money and about you." By evening, there were 4 missed calls. 4 different voices, 4 different stories, all using the same word, mother. That was the moment I understood. The $1 million was never the prize. It was the signal, and whatever I had lost in my past had just found me again. I did not answer the messages right away. People think silence means fear. Sometimes it means counting. I counted the years instead. The years since I had last held a child. The years since I had stopped expecting anyone to call me mother. By the time I answered the first message, the sun was already low. His name was Daniel. At least, that's what he said. "I'm sorry to contact you like this," the message read. "But I was told years ago that you might be my mother. I never looked for you. I didn't want to disrupt your life." A disrupt, a careful word. I asked one simple question. "How did you find me?" His reply came too fast. When the funds were released, a notification went out to related records. My name was flagged. Flagged again. Different story. Same word. We agreed to meet the next day at a cafe near the bus station. Public places make people braver and more careful at the same time. I arrived early. Old habits don't leave just because hope does. He was already there. Mid-30s, clean jacket, eyes that scanned the room before settling on me. He smiled when he saw me, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "You look just like the photo," he said. "What photo?" I asked. The pause was short, too short. "The one in the file," he replied. "What file?" I asked. He waved his hand lightly, like it was nothing. "Adoption records, hospital notes." Notes. People remember details when they've studied them. We sat. He ordered coffee for both of us without asking. That bothered me more than it should have. "I never wanted anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted to meet you." Then he added softly, "But when I heard about the money, there it was. Not the reason, the permission." I asked about his childhood. He spoke smoothly. Foster homes. A kind couple who almost adopted him. A file that never quite closed. He knew dates, names, places, too many. When people live something, memory is uneven. When people learn something, memory is precise. "Why now?" I asked. He looked down at his cup. "Because this might be the last chance," he said. "You're old. I'm not trying to be cruel." Cruel is what people say when they want credit for honesty. "I was told my mother gave me up willingly," he continued. "That she didn't fight." I felt something tighten in my chest. "That's not true," I said. He looked surprised, for just a second. Then his face softened. "They told me you signed everything," he said gently. "That you wanted to forget." Forget. Another word that moves responsibility away from those who took the choice. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. Another message. Unknown number. "I think we share the same mother." Daniel noticed my expression. "You too?" he asked, too, as if this were already a group. I didn't answer him. I stood up. "I need time," I said. He nodded, but his eyes followed my hand as I picked up my bag. "Of course," he said. "Take all the time you need." Then he said something that made my skin go cold. "We've all waited long enough." I went home and locked the door. By nightfall, 2 more messages arrived. Different names, different voices, same claim, same sudden certainty. By midnight, I had 4 children, all found by the same thing, the money. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter from the bank beside me, and understood something far worse than coincidence. This wasn't fate, it was exposure. The $1 million hadn't made me rich. It had made me visible, and the people who had found me already knew more than I did. The second one didn't write like the first. There was no apology, no hesitation, just a message that appeared on my phone the next morning. "We should meet." There are things you need to explain. Not ask, explain. Her name was Rachel. She didn't wait for my response. An address followed the message. A time, that afternoon. People who give you instructions instead of questions already believe something about you. I went anyway. Curiosity is dangerous at my age, but so is pretending you don't hear the knock. Rachel chose a restaurant too expensive for its location. The kind of place where people go to be seen agreeing on things. She was younger than Daniel. Late 20s, maybe. Sharp eyes, careful makeup. A posture that leaned forward even while sitting still. She didn't smile when she saw me. "You don't look like I imagined," she said. I sat down slowly. "Neither do you." She didn't laugh. "I'll be direct," she said. "I don't want a relationship." "Good, neither did I." "I want answers," she continued. "And I want to know what you plan to do with the money." There it was again, not love, not grief, strategy. "You found me quickly," I said. "How?" She crossed her arms. "I've been looking for years," she said. But doors opened when the account moved. Moved, a single word that explained everything. "So you knew about the account before I did," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "I knew something was coming," she replied. "I didn't know it would be this much." Honesty arrived late, but it arrived. She told me her version. A closed adoption, a sealed file, a lawyer who once hinted there were assets attached to the birth mother. "She said you weren't poor," Rachel said. "Just inconvenient." Inconvenient. The word landed like a slap. "I never gave you away willingly," I said quietly. Rachel shrugged. "That's not what the papers say." Papers again. They had a habit of speaking for people who were never allowed to speak themselves. "Did you come here because you wanted me?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, "I came because the situation has changed." Changed? She leaned forward. "There are 4 of us," she said. "I've spoken to 2. My stomach tightened. "So you're coordinating," I said. She smiled thinly. "Someone has to," she replied, "before things get messy." Messy, as if my life were a table that needed wiping. "What do you want?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "A fair share," she said. "And clarity, I don't want surprises later." Later, always later when people want to secure now. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. "He's impatient," she said. I asked. She stood. "We'll talk again," she said. "But you should understand something." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "We didn't find you because we missed you." She paused. "We found you because the money remembered you." She left without waiting for my reply. I sat alone at the table, listening to the soft clatter of dishes and conversation around me. 2 children, 2 completely different faces. One wanted belonging. One wanted control. Neither wanted the truth. On my way home, my phone rang again. A new number, a man's voice this time. Older than Daniel, rougher. "I think I'm your son," he said. "And I think the others are lying." I closed my eyes. That made 3. And something told me the 4th would be the worst. Because whatever had happened in my past had not scattered my children by accident. Someone had planned it, and now the plan was waking up. The 3rd one called after midnight. People who wait until then believe the dark will make you honest. His name was Marcus. He didn't introduce himself carefully. He didn't apologize. He went straight to the point. "I know what they told you," he said, "and I know what they didn't." His voice was calm. Too calm. "I don't want money," he continued. "That's what makes me different from the others. People who say that usually want leverage instead." "What do you want?" I asked. "The truth," he replied, "because I already have the documents." That was when I sat down. You weren't supposed to keep them, I said without thinking. There was a pause on the line, then a quiet laugh. So it's true, he said. They said you wouldn't remember. Remember, another familiar word. I remember everything, I said. Good, Marcus replied. Then you'll remember the doctor's name. My chest tightened. He didn't rush me. People who know something valuable let silence work for them. They separated us on purpose, he said finally. Different agencies, different states, different records. To protect you, I said automatically. No, he replied, to protect someone else. We agreed to meet 2 days later. Not in a cafe, not in public, at a park on the edge of town. Places with open space make it harder to lie. Marcus arrived late, tall, broad shoulders, eyes that didn't wander. He handed me a folder. Inside were copies of hospital transfer forms, consent pages, signatures, not mine. They forged your approval, he said. Not all at once, over time. He pointed to a date. That's when the twins were separated, he said. Twins. I felt the word before I understood it. There were never twins, I said. Marcus looked at me carefully. There were, he replied. They just told you one didn't survive. The air felt thin. That's impossible, I whispered. That's what they needed you to believe, he said. He showed me another page, a memo. Assets associated with birth mother require separation to minimize future claims. Assets, even then, even before the money, I closed the folder. My hands were shaking now, not with age, with rage. How did you get this? I asked. I work in records, Marcus said. I wasn't looking for you. I was auditing old cases. Auditing, that meant this wasn't personal, it was systemic. The others don't know this, he said, and I'm not sure they should. Why? I asked. Because people who feel cheated don't look for justice, he replied. They look for compensation. I looked out at the empty swings moving slightly in the wind. 4 children, not born into chaos, placed into it. And the money was never luck. It was bait. Someone had always known it would surface. Marcus closed the folder. And if the others find out, he said, they'll stop seeing you as a mother. What will they see? I asked. A key, he replied, to a door they think you locked. I walked home alone. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my table and laid out the facts. 4 children, 4 different stories, 1 deliberate separation, and $1 million that arrived too late to be innocent. The next morning, my phone lit up with a group message. Daniel had created it. All of them were there. We need to talk, he wrote. I stared at the screen, because now I knew something they didn't. And once they found out, this would no longer be about family. It would be about blame. And blame always turns violent in quiet ways. They chose my house. Not because it was comfortable, because it was central. People who plan conflict prefer familiar ground. I cleaned the table slowly, the same one where I had once paid bills and eaten alone. Now there were 4 chairs pulled out. 4. Daniel arrived first, carrying pastries like an offering. He smiled too much. I didn't know what you liked, he said, so I brought options. Options are what people bring when they want to be chosen. Rachel came next. No food, no smile. She looked around the house like she was measuring it. "How much is this worth?" She asked, almost casually. Then Marcus arrived. He nodded to me, nothing more. His eyes moved to Rachel, then to Daniel. He said nothing. The fourth came last. Her name was Leela. She was the quietest of all. No messages, no demands. She stood in the doorway for a long moment before stepping inside, as if crossing a line she had avoided her entire life. "I didn't think you'd be real," she said softly. Her voice carried something the others lacked. Uncertainty. We sat. The silence stretched, thick and awkward. Daniel broke it first. "We should talk about what happens next," he said. "With the money and everything." Rachel nodded. "We need structure." Structure again. They were already dividing the future. "I didn't call you here for money," I said. Rachel smiled thinly. "That's easy to say when it's yours." Marcus leaned back. "It's not hers alone," he said. "And it's not yours either." That was when the first crack appeared. "What do you mean?" Daniel asked. Marcus didn't look at me when he answered. "I mean this wasn't an accident," he said. "The money didn't just appear." Rachel's posture changed. "What are you talking about?" Marcus finally looked at her. "There were assets attached to our birth," he said, "and conditions." The word hung in the air. "Conditions," Leela repeated. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't how I planned it, but plans don't survive truth. Marcus placed the folder on the table. "I didn't want to bring this out yet," he said. "But if we're going to pretend this is a family meeting, then we should stop pretending about the past." Rachel reached for the folder. I stopped her. "Not yet," I said. She looked at me sharply. "Why?" "Because once you read it," I replied. "You won't hear anything else I say." Daniel laughed nervously. "This is getting dramatic." "It's getting honest," Marcus said. Leela finally spoke. "Why were we separated?" she asked me. Not accusing, not demanding, asking. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. "Because the truth was heavier than I remembered." "I was told lies," I said finally. "And I believed them." Rachel scoffed. "Convenient." Marcus's voice hardened. "No, strategic." The argument erupted then, not shouting, talking over each other, interruptions, corrections. Daniel wanted reassurance. Rachel wanted guarantees. Marcus wanted exposure. Leela wanted answers, and all of them wanted something from me. At some point, Daniel said the word that changed everything. "We deserve compensation." Compensation, not inheritance, not understanding, payment. Marcus stood. "This is exactly what they wanted," he said. Us turning on her instead of looking up. "Who is they?" Rachel demanded. Marcus looked at me. I nodded. "There are names," he said, "and institutions." Rachel folded her arms. "I don't care who's guilty. I care about what's fair." Fair. The most dangerous word in a room full of hurt people. I stood slowly. "This money didn't bring you to me," I said. "It exposed you to each other." No one answered, because they were all thinking the same thing. If the money went away, so would the reason to stay. That night, after they left, I locked the door and leaned against it. My house felt smaller, not because of them, because I understood something too late. The $1 million had done exactly what it was meant to do. It gathered my children in one place so they could finally decide what to do with me, and that decision was already forming. The first sign was how quiet my phone became, not silent, selective. Messages arrived, but not for everyone. Daniel stopped calling me directly. Rachel started sending short updates that sounded polite but empty. Marcus went quiet entirely. Only Leela checked in the way people do when they don't know which side they're on yet. "Are you okay?" she asked one evening. Not about the money, not about the meeting, just me. That mattered. 2 days later, I learned about the alliance by accident. I was making tea when my phone buzzed with a notification that wasn't meant for me. A message preview flashed across the screen. Daniel's name. Rachel's reply underneath it. "If we agree on numbers first, the rest will follow." Numbers, not names. I didn't open the message. You don't need to read Poison to know what it does. That afternoon, Daniel came by alone. He didn't bring pastries this time. He sat where Marcus had sat and folded his hands like a man preparing to negotiate. "I think we should simplify this," he said. "Simplify what?" I asked. "The confusion," he replied. "The past. Past is what people call truth when they want to close it." "There's no reason for this to get ugly," he continued. "We can handle things quietly." Quietly, another familiar word. "I've spoken to Rachel," he added too casually. "She agrees." "Agrees to what?" "To protect everyone," he said. "You especially." There it was. A protection always arrives with a cost. "I don't need protection," I replied. "I need honesty." Daniel sighed. "Marcus is dangerous." "Because he has documents?" I asked. "Because he wants to burn everything down," Daniel said, "and we'll all get hurt." We. The word that pretends unity while hiding hierarchy. "What are you proposing?" I asked. He slid a piece of paper toward me, not a contract, a plan, a trust structure, a distribution schedule, guardrails. "If you sign this," he said, "we can manage the money responsibly. No investigations. No surprises. Manage again. And if I do?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, then softly, "Then things get complicated." That night Marcus finally called. "They're moving without you," he said. "Rachel contacted a lawyer." "I know," I replied. "They're trying to lock the money down," he continued. "And limit what you can say. Say, not do. They asked me to stay out of it," he added. I refused. I closed my eyes. This was no longer about money. It was about who would control the story. "Marcus," I asked, "why are you really helping me?" There was a pause. "Because they did this to my mother too," he said. "She died before she figured it out." That answer settled deep in my chest. The next morning, Rachel came without warning. She didn't sit. "I don't trust Marcus," she said. "And I don't trust you not to protect him." "Protect," she leaned forward. "If you don't cooperate," she continued, "we'll be forced to pursue options that limit your involvement." Limit my involvement in my own life. I looked at her carefully. "You're not asking for money," I said. "You're asking for control." She didn't deny it. Outside, I watched her walk to her car, already typing. By evening, I understood the shape of the alliance. Daniel and Rachel together, Marcus isolated, Leela undecided, and me, I was the asset. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "They aren't fighting each other yet, they're positioning. And when people finish positioning, they strike." The letter arrived on a Thursday morning, registered, urgent. My name typed neatly on the front. That alone told me who it was from, Rachel. Inside was a notice of intent, not a threat, not yet. A legal declaration stating that concerns had been raised about my capacity to manage sudden wealth responsibly. Sudden wealth, as if the money had fallen into a stranger's lap, not waited decades in silence. They were requesting an evaluation, not asking, requesting. The language was careful, so careful it was almost kind. I sat at the table and read it twice. Then I noticed something worse. Daniel's name appeared beneath Rachel's, as a supporting party. I folded the letter and placed it beside my tea. People believe betrayal arrives loudly. It doesn't. It arrives formatted. That afternoon, Leela came over. She looked frightened, not of me, but of what she had overheard. "They didn't mean for me to know," she said quietly. "But they're moving fast." "How fast?" I asked. "They already spoke to the bank," she replied, "and to someone about supervision." Supervision, another word that means removal without violence. I nodded. Leela's hands trembled. "I didn't agree," she said quickly. "I just listened." Listening was enough. Because listening had allowed her to warn me. That evening, Marcus called. "They filed it," he said. "They're pushing for temporary control." Control again, temporary again, those words traveled together. "What happens now?" I asked. "They'll claim it's for your protection," he replied. "They'll freeze things, limit access." Speak for you, speak for me. I felt something settle inside my chest, not fear, clarity. "They think I won't fight," I said. Marcus exhaled sharply. "Because they think you'll be ashamed." Ashamed, that was the weapon. An old woman accused of losing control looks small on paper. "I won't be small," I said. The next morning, a call came from the bank. Polite, concerned. "We've received a request to review your account activity." "From whom?" I asked. There was a pause. "From parties listed as beneficiaries." Beneficiaries. They hadn't earned anything yet. But they were already speaking like owners. I thanked the agent and hung up. Then I did something no one expected. I moved the money, not to hide it, to protect it from being frozen under their narrative. Marcus helped. Lawfully, documented, transparent. That was my first irreversible move. Money, once moved, leaves a trail, and trails lead somewhere. By nightfall, Rachel sent a message. "You didn't have the right." I stared at it, then replied with my first message to her since the meeting. "I had the right the moment you decided to take it." There was no response, because she understood. The story had changed. They could no longer act quietly. Now, if they wanted control, they would have to be seen taking it, and that visibility terrified them. I went to bed knowing one thing for certain. The danger wasn't coming. It was already in motion. The group message exploded before sunrise. Daniel started it. "We need to talk, now." Rachel replied seconds later. She moved the money without consent. Consent. They loved that word when it benefited them. Marcus read the messages but didn't answer. Leela didn't either. I watched the screen light up again and again, names flashing like warnings. Daniel wrote, "This proves she's unstable." Rachel followed, "Exactly why we need intervention." Unstable. The word they had been circling finally landed. Then Marcus broke his silence. "You're not worried about her. You're worried you lost leverage." That changed everything. Rachel responded immediately. "You don't understand what's at stake." Marcus replied, "I understand perfectly. You just didn't expect her to act." I closed the app. Families don't argue in text when they want resolution. They argue there when they want records. By midday, Daniel showed up at my door unannounced. His voice was tight, controlled. "You embarrassed us," he said, "us again. You forced our hand." "I protected myself," I replied. "You made us look like predators," he snapped. I studied his face. People only worry about appearances when there's something to hide. Rachel arrived minutes later. She didn't knock. "We had an agreement," she said. "No," I replied. "You had a plan." She stepped closer. "If this goes public," she warned, "they'll think you're being manipulated." "They already do," I said calmly. That stopped her. Behind them, Leela stood near the doorway, silent. Her eyes were wet. "I didn't want this," she whispered. Rachel turned sharply. "You should have stayed out of it." That was when Leela spoke louder than I'd ever heard her. "You're doing this for yourselves," she said. "Not for her." Daniel laughed bitterly. "You're naive." "And you're greedy," Marcus said from the doorway. They all turned. No one had heard him arrive. He held a thin folder in his hand. "Enough," he said. Rachel folded her arms. "What is that?" "Oh, the truth," Marcus replied. "And I'm done protecting you from it." He placed the folder on the table. Inside were copies of memos, emails, dates. "Adoption agencies were paid to separate us," he said. "Funds were attached. Conditions were set." Rachel's face drained of color. Daniel stared. "You knew," Marcus continued. "You both knew there was money tied to her. That's why you were watching." "That's a lie," Daniel said too quickly. Marcus turned to him. "You contacted the records office 2 years ago," he said. "Before she ever knew about the money." Silence fell hard. Rachel's voice shook. "You had no right to dig this up." "I had every right," Marcus replied. "You just didn't expect me to use it against you." Against. That was the moment family became opponents. Daniel stood abruptly. "If this gets out," he said, "everything burns." Marcus nodded. "Good." I looked at all 4 of them. 4 children bound by blood, undone by money. "This ends now," I said. No one listened. Because once people taste control, they don't give it up quietly. That night, I realized something worse than betrayal. The money hadn't just reunited my children, it had weaponized them. And the worst part was still coming. Because the final child hadn't chosen a side yet, I was alone when the call came. That mattered. Because calls like that are meant to divide. The number was unfamiliar. No name, no warning. I answered anyway. "This is Detective Harris," a man said. "Ma'am, I'm calling regarding historical adoption records connected to your name." I sat down slowly, not from fear, from understanding. Someone had made the call, not to talk, to force exposure. "We've received documentation suggesting irregularities," he continued. "Payments, directives, altered files." Altered, that word never belongs to accidents. "I didn't report anything," I said. "We know," he replied. "The report didn't come from you." Of course it didn't. Rachel preferred control. Daniel preferred pressure. This had Marcus written all over it, or so they wanted it to look. "Were you aware," the detective asked carefully, "that multiple agencies coordinated the separation of your children?" I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said. I was aware after it was already done. There was a pause, then, "We may need to speak with you formally." Formally, evidence had entered the room. When I hung up, my phone buzzed immediately, a message from Rachel. "What did you do?" Then one from Daniel. "Someone called the authorities, was it you?" And finally, one from Marcus. "It wasn't me." That was the most frightening part, because Marcus always warned before acting. Leela arrived an hour later, breathless. "They're panicking," she said. "They're blaming each other." "Who made the call?" I asked. She shook her head. "I don't know, but Rachel's lawyer is scrambling." Lawyer. So this had crossed from family into records, into consequences. That evening, the past stopped being something we argued about. It became something that could be verified. I spread the documents across my table. The memos Marcus brought, the bank letters, the adoption notices. Patterns don't care who finds them, they simply wait. At midnight, Daniel called. His voice was different, not angry, afraid. "If this goes forward," he said, "they'll look at everything, even us." Us, now he wanted unity. "You already chose sides," I replied. "You don't understand," he said quickly. "They weren't just separating us." "What else were they doing?" I asked. He hesitated. Then he said something that made my hands go cold. "They were testing which of us would come back for the money. Testing children as bait." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. "You knew," I said. "I suspected," he replied. And I stayed quiet. That was his confession, not of guilt, of cowardice. After the call, I realized something terrible. The worst truth wasn't what had been done to us. It was that some of my children had known and waited. By morning, investigators would be asking questions. And by then, family loyalty would mean nothing. Because once evidence enters the story, love becomes irrelevant. The investigators came separately. That was deliberate. They don't ask families questions together. They let silence do the separating. They came to my house first. 2 of them. A woman who watched faces. A man who watched hands. They asked me to start from the beginning. Not from the money, from the hospital, from the day I was told my children would be taken care of. I spoke slowly. I described the room, the doctor's voice, the forms I was too weak to read fully, the reassurance that everything was standard. Standard again. They took notes. When I finished, the woman looked up. "You were never meant to find them," she said quietly. "That wasn't a question." "No," I replied, "but the money remembered." They left with copies of everything. By afternoon, they were with Rachel. I know because she called me afterward. Her voice was tight, rehearsed. They're twisting things, she said, trying to turn history into a crime. History doesn't get investigated unless someone benefited from it. They asked about the money, she continued. About whether I contacted records offices before you. Did you? I asked. Silence. That told me enough. Daniel called next, angry now, defensive. They think we planned this, he said. They think we waited. You did wait, I replied. That's not fair, he snapped. We were children. You weren't children 2 years ago, I said. He hung up. Marcus didn't call. He showed up. He stood in my kitchen like someone waiting for judgment. They asked me everything, he said. They know about the audits, the memos. And, I asked, they're focusing on Rachel, he replied. She contacted intermediaries, lawyers, consultants. Consultants. A word that means planning without fingerprints. What about Daniel? I asked. Marcus hesitated. They're deciding whether silence counts as participation. That answer frightened me more than certainty, because silence is what most people choose. That evening, Leela came and sat beside me on the couch. They asked me why I didn't act sooner, she said softly. And what did you tell them? That I was afraid of losing what little family I had. I took her hand. By nightfall, the calls stopped, not because things were resolved. Because the truth had chosen a direction. Rachel sent one final message. If this destroys us, remember who started it. I didn't reply because she was wrong. This didn't start with a phone call. It started decades ago. When someone decided a poor woman's children were assets to be managed, the investigation moved forward without asking permission. And now one of my children understood something too late. The truth doesn't arrive evenly. It lands where it's earned. The news didn't come from the investigators. It came from Rachel. Her message was short, unpolished, not written by a lawyer. They served me this morning. Served, a word people use when the ground finally gives way. I didn't answer right away. I waited the way I had learned to wait all my life. An hour later, she called. Her voice was shaking now, not angry, not sharp, scared. They're freezing my accounts, she said. They're reviewing everything, my work, my contacts. Contacts, the invisible web she thought no one could see. You said you wanted fairness, I replied. This is what fairness looks like when it's written down. That's not what I meant, she said quickly. I didn't think it would come to this. No one ever does. Daniel called next, not to defend her, to distance himself. I never signed anything, he said. I never took money. You waited, I replied. He was silent. They asked me why I stayed quiet, he said finally. And I didn't have an answer that sounded clean. Clean, that word again. Marcus sent a message, not a call. They're widening the scope. I knew what that meant. When investigations widen, they stop caring about intentions. They care about patterns. Leela came to me that evening with red eyes. She called me, Leela said. Rachel, she asked me to say she tried to protect you. Protect. The word had been used too many times to mean too little. What did you tell her? I asked. That I wouldn't lie, Leela replied. I held her close. That night, the past finally caught up to the present. A reporter called, then another. Someone had leaked part of the story. Not names yet, just a headline. Historic adoption practices under review after financial irregularities surface. Irregularities, a polite word for damage. Rachel texted again. They're saying my name will be mentioned. I looked at the message and felt something unexpected. Relief. Because secrets rot quietly, exposure at least lets air in. The next morning, Daniel arrived early. He looked smaller. I didn't think silence would count as guilt, he said. It always does, I replied. Just later. He nodded, like someone finally accepting gravity. By noon, Rachel's lawyer requested mediation. Too late, you can't negotiate with what's already public. By evening, Marcus sat across from me, exhausted. They're calling it systemic abuse, he said, and financial exploitation. Exploitation, the word they had avoided for decades. I leaned back in my chair. 4 children, 1 truth. And consequences that no longer belonged to me to control. The money sat untouched now, irrelevant, because the real inheritance had arrived, and it wasn't something anyone wanted to claim. By the time everything stopped moving, nothing felt settled. Investigations don't end with closure. They end with exhaustion. Rachel's name appeared in print first, not as a villain, as a facilitator, the kind of person systems use to keep their hands clean. Daniel wasn't charged, but he wasn't untouched. Silence followed him everywhere now, the kind that makes rooms colder. Marcus was called a whistleblower. A word that sounds brave but feels lonely. Leela stayed. She didn't inherit certainty. She inherited aftermath. The money remained frozen until the courts decided what it had always been. Not a gift, not luck, evidence. Eventually, it was placed into a trust, not for us, for others. Children whose names had never been said out loud. I agreed, because money that breaks families shouldn't build new ones quietly. The house became quiet again. Not empty, honest. One afternoon, Leela asked me if I regretted answering the first message. I thought about it. No, I said. I regret what was done before we could speak. She nodded. Daniel stopped calling. Rachel sent one last letter, handwritten. It said, I didn't mean to become this. No one ever does. Marcus visits sometimes. We drink tea. We don't talk about the investigation anymore. There's nothing left to explain. On the anniversary of the letter from the bank, I opened my notebook one last time. I wrote, the money didn't reunite my children, it revealed them. Then I closed it. People think stories like this end with justice. They don't. They end with clarity, and clarity is heavier than forgiveness. I am still alone, but I am no longer invisible, and that is enough. End.